Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Cheese Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at RealBirdLawyer. Here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit. No longer brought to you by the Pigskin Podcast Network. It no longer exists, but we are looking for a new home. Stay tuned for news on that. And since we're temporarily between networks, check us out on Underdog Fantasy, our personal sponsors. You can use our promo code SUNNY, get you a matching deposit on your first deposit up to $100. You put 100 in, you get 100 free. Taylor, what's going on?
I am super excited because I'll just go right into the intro before we do our news. We are joined also by KCSN Chiefs analyst and is great, Craig Stout. Craig, how are you tonight?
Buddy, I am great. And I love that I can call myself great because there are people in this world that cannot call me great right now due to contractual obligations. They know who they are. And I'm going to just leverage this the best that I absolutely can, because I very rarely get to do that, but it's also great to be joined by you two. I love talking football with you two.
Yes, it's a blast. We can't wait to go over all of our fun, and also the Chiefs make it easy on us, right? So can't go wrong there.
Boys, let's just get right into the news. We got to talk about what went down this week down in Texas. Patrick Mahomes and the boys working out. Not a surprise. Happens every offseason. Building that chemistry with the wide receiver. The real news this week, fellas, is who's joining them. Draft-eligible wide receivers Quentin Johnson and today Zay Flowers, both of whom are projected as top 5 wide receivers in the KCSN draft guide. Both of them spotted working out with Patrick Mahomes this week. And Zay Flowers, at the request of the Chiefs, was no longer going to be taking visits. He took a visit with Tennessee and said, that's it, I'm done. And at the request of the Chiefs, came in to work with Patrick Mahomes. Craig, obviously, we see Patrick Mahomes working out with his teammates frequently and occasionally with other NFL players, but a little bit unusual to see him working out with 2 draft-eligible wide receivers the week before the NFL draft. Do you read any into this at all?
Well, the first thing that I'm going to read into this is this feels like cheating, right?
Like it does.
This doesn't feel totally legal. Like, it feels completely like they shouldn't be able to do this. I love that they are. Like, I mean, it's awesome, but it simultaneously feels like, boy, the rest of the NFL should be doing this right now.
Do we have a grip on if other teams do these workout programs?
I do think that there's something to be said for the Quentin Johnson one. I don't think was as big of a deal. I think it was a semi-big deal, but as big of a deal because they were at TCU. Like,
Sure. Yep.
A lot of those players work out at their local facilities. It makes sense there. But Zay Flowers coming in and working with the quarterback and the rest of the teams is noteworthy because, no, to my knowledge, I don't know of many teams, if any at all, that allow their quarterbacks to work with other wide receivers that are coming out of the draft. It just seems weird.
Yep.
It's crazy because obviously on the one hand, I mean, it's great for the Chiefs to get this information. We've heard all the time, all the organizations in the NFL does this, and the Chiefs are no exception, that, they'll have players in for visits, even if, the odds of them getting that player are low, because you get a book on these guys. I mean, these guys may go to, the Chargers or another team in the AFC, and it's helpful to have those reps. You can look back on the work that they did with your quarterback, and you've got a little bit of scouting report and a little bit of inside knowledge on them. But it is interesting with this being a week out from the draft. I mean, it almost feels too obvious, though, right? Because if you're the Chiefs and you're picking at 31, and both of these guys, Quentin Johnson, we'll talk about the wide receiver class in a little bit. Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers, both guys that could go in the first round, that have the chance to go before the Chiefs pick at 31. And it does feel a little bit, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, do you know that we know that we know that you know?
Yeah.
I mean, would it shock you at this point to see either of these guys be the selection at the end of the first round next week?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And I think that this is a slightly ingenious way of getting that chemistry built early, figuring out if they're receptive to their quarterback's wishes, figuring out if, at this point, the team's built around Pat. So if he's working with Quentin Johnson, he's working with Zay Flowers, let's say Jordan Addison shows up down there, tomorrow, who knows?
It's like free trial.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Try it before you buy it.
And technically, this can't be considered a top 30 visit because he's
Right.
just going to work out in TCU's facility. So it seems like a way to kind of skirt the NFL's rules. And then at the end, kind of, brainstorming with Pat and saying, okay, which one of these guys did you like the most? What did you see? Maybe they can even pass Patrick some routes, basically say, okay, we want to see this route out of this guy and how he works with you and the timing and all of that. Like it seemed, like I said, it seems like cheating.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is too, Austin, you mentioned that, maybe Quentin Johnston wasn't as big of a deal because they were at TCU, but why do you think they were at TCU specifically? They could have worked out at Texas Tech. They could have worked out somewhere in White House. I mean, they've got, Patrick owns Texas just like he owns Kansas City, and certainly could have gone anywhere they wanted and any facility to go work out, but they chose TCU. I mean, it was very deliberate, I think, that they've got their eyes on Johnston, Flowers, some top wide receiver prospect at 31. It might not be those two if they're both picked, but I think that it does kind of send a lot of smoke signals about the direction that they're leaning, because they're not bringing in day 2 wide receivers to go work out. They're bringing in guys that they think could be there at 31. I'll be shocked at this point if they pick a position other than wide receiver at 31. Craig, what do you think about the chances that they don't get a wide receiver with their first pick?
I mean, I think that there's a decent chance that there's only one available, if any at all. Like, I really do think that, I think that, JSN, Jackson Smith in Jigba is gone. Like, I just think he's probably going to be wide receiver 1. We have heard a ton of people that are really, fond of Zay Flowers as well. Just he's going to be, a high floor kind of guy. Same with Jordan Addison. I can see those two guys being gone. Quentin Johnston has the height, weight, speed, that you would want out of a wide receiver 1 as well. So you could see him gone. Like, I can make a justification for every single one of those individuals to go before probably pick 25 in the NFL draft. So yeah, there is, I would say there is more chance than not that 4 wide receivers will go before the Kansas City Chiefs pick at 31. So if they want one of these guys, I think they got to trade up for him. I just don't know if these guys are so good that it's worthy of a trade up at this point.
Yeah. Let's wrap up the news here, and then we'll dive more into the draft talk. Chiefs have a new backup quarterback. They signed former Missouri great and former Tampa Bay Buccaneer great Blaine Gabbert, former Jacksonville Jaguar great. I don't have his resume in front of me. Those are just the ones off the top of the old dome.
Titans, Jags, and Bucks, I think, are the only 3 I could pull.
But Blaine Gabbert in the room, and a little bit interesting, the timing of it, because obviously I know much of Chiefs Kingdom was up in arms about Dane Brugler's latest mock draft. Love Dane Brugler's work, but he did have the Chiefs taking a backup quarterback in round 3. This was a shock to me, not only because obviously the Chiefs were, I listened to Dane on the Athletic podcast, and, he's saying, look, I mean, the Chiefs, this is what I'm hearing from teams, from league sources, that the Chiefs are interested in a guy, but also because the Chiefs have carried Shane Buechele on this roster for 2+ years, and protected him the last couple of years from being poached off of the roster. And I think the assumption was, after Chad Henne retired, at least by me, was that Shane Buechele was going to be the backup quarterback. And now it turns out Shane Buechele is not ready for the big backup QB2 chair. It's Blaine Gabbert. Does that surprise you at all, Craig?
No, actually, I think that this is a really smart move. I think that this is probably where it should go. Yeah, I was going to be fine with Shane Buechele as a, QB2 sort of situation. I know a lot of people were kind of clamoring for the Chiefs to maybe take a QB3 in the NFL draft this year just because they didn't have another guy. Shane Buechele's probably bringing enough to the film room in his 2 years that you can justifiably keep him on the roster still as a QB3. But Blaine Gabbert's been around. Blaine Gabbert's been in multiple different rooms, multiple different coaches. He's going to see coverages in a little bit different light than maybe some of the other guys that have been in the room. And at this point, we really just kind of look at that backup quarterback position as another coach for Patrick to, kind of have as a sounding board to bounce ideas off of. That's what Matt Moore was. That's what Chad Henne was. Yeah, it's nice to have a guy that can come in and lead a 99-yard drive in the playoffs. And who knows if Blaine Gabbert's going to be able to do that. But at the very least, you have a guy day in and day out that Patrick feels comfortable with bouncing ideas off of. I think Blaine Gabbert fits that to a T.
I completely agree. Just to round out his resume, he was also with San Francisco and Arizona. So he's been to 5 NFL teams. This will be his 6th. And, he seems like the kind of guy that if you need him for one big drive, like I certainly would trust him over Shane Buechele. I certainly would, feel more comfortable. And as Austin, as you and I talked on the show last week, like the backup quarterback role has come up in multiple Super Bowl runs for the Chiefs, where between Matt Moore and Chad Henne, I mean, they've had some big moments when Patrick's been dinged up. And yeah, I agree that I think that they want a veteran presence to bounce ideas off of, and they want someone that if you're shoved into the limelight, they certainly don't want your first NFL pass that matters to be in a playoff game. They don't want that to be what they give Shane Buechele, and they can't really prep him for the type of pressure and stuff that would come from a actual meaningful drive or meaningful quarter or game in the NFL. So they've just, I like bringing in a vet there. I think there were a couple options that I would have been fine with, and Gabbert's one of them.
He's been the QB2 in Tampa with Tom Brady the last 3 seasons. The year before that, he was with Tennessee, with Ryan Tannehill. The year before that, he was in Arizona with Bruce Arians. So, I mean, he's been in the room with a lot of really smart people. Now, whether he's absorbed that, I mean, if he just wants to come in and be a Tom Brady proxy to sort of, sit on Pat's shoulder and give him advice about how to check the ball down, so be it. Sounds great. One more bit of quarterback news that sort of indirectly affects the Chiefs. This week, Howie Roseman getting way out in front of the ball here, signs Jalen Hurts to a record-breaking extension, over $250 million in new money, over $50 million APY. He becomes the richest player by annual value in NFL history. And this is really pretty remarkable. I mean, obviously, a lot of love still for the Eagles organization on this podcast. It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. It comes from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We beat them head-to-head in the Super Bowl. We love Jason, and we love Howie because this deal coming in where it did, I mean, we're talking, the draft is still a week away. They got this extension done unbelievably quickly, and they got it in before Joe Burrow. They got it in before Justin Herbert, and they got it in before Lamar Jackson, which, I mean, maybe you don't give them a lot of extra credit for that because, let's face it, the Ravens have kind of fumbled the bag there. But, Craig, I mean, this is going to, if Jalen Hurts is getting $51 million a year, how much does Joe Burrow get? How much can he reasonably extort from the Bengals?
I mean, 60? You can reasonably put that in there. Yes, I'm a big fan of Jalen Hurts. I've been a big fan of him forever. We got to talk to him when he was at the Senior Bowl, when he was repping a dual Oklahoma, Alabama helmet, and he's just the absolute nicest guy. You can tell the coaching staffs all loved him. I totally get why the Philadelphia Eagles would sign him up here because, he was the MVP runner-up here, but he still isn't the kind of guy that you're going to look at and say, okay, well, we want to commit to that guy for, a decade in the way that the Chiefs would with Patrick Mahomes and the way that the Bengals probably should with Joe Burrow. But it is going to send shockwaves throughout the NFL right now with everything that's going to happen here. Lamar Jackson has every right to ask for exactly what Jalen Hurts is getting.
I agree.
And Joe Burrow has that right. Justin Herbert might have that right. That one is debatable a little bit. He
hasn't lost the Super Bowl, so
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I guess that's the one leg that his agent has to stand on. But there's going to be a lot of guys like that you're going to look at and say, Trevor Lawrence is coming down the line too. If he has another good season, he is justifiable in asking for that as well. So there's a lot of things that this is going to change in the NFL's quarterback market. So kudos to the Eagles. I mean, getting it done, going out there and making sure that they weren't going to be on the back end of some of this ripple effect here because, I mean, he's the best quarterback in the NFC and it's not particularly close.
Right.
So they should make sure that they take care of him because the NFC has 0 good quarterbacks right now outside of Jalen Hurts.
Right. It's really remarkable how the power of the young quarterbacks is literally completely all in the AFC right now. And so every time these guys are all going to get paid, you also have to pit them up against each other and pit them up against their chances of dethroning Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I mean, it's just the dynamics of being a big time franchise quarterback in the NFL right now are so so interesting, and especially from the AFC side. And then you've got Jalen Hurts, as you said, sitting over in the NFC. I mean, the Eagles looked unstoppable when he was the quarterback last year. And I mean, frankly, easily could have defeated the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And so, I mean, you've got the momentum from last year, and then they throw him this giant bag. And now, Burrow is a number one pick. He lost a Super Bowl. His resume looks, just as good, if not better than Jalen Hurts's from a just purely accomplishment perspective. And
he was the number one pick. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, his profile is, like you said, is one pocket passer. It's a guy that doesn't look like when he ages, he's going to get much worse, which, I mean, hard to say about Hurts at this point, but I completely agree with that whole, situation with Hurts. And then, yeah, I just find it really fascinating how I find Herbert to be the most fascinating case of all of them, because he hasn't won a playoff game. He, is barely over 500 for his NFL career. And yet he's got a Greek god's arm. I mean, he's absolutely, anybody that watches him play sees a top.
Especially when you watch him play against the Chiefs.
Yes, I mean, that's true. He levels up a little bit when he goes out there, but he, doesn't have any accolades to go with a $55 million contract, but the Chargers are probably going to have to do it. So yeah, I found the Hurts domino to be an interesting one, because of all the contract situations going forward, like, they're all going to be hilarious to us as Chiefs fans, because every time one of these guys signs, it bumps Patrick down the list and down the list and down the list of highest paid quarterbacks. And we all clearly know who the best quarterback is. So good situation.
Speaking of things that are hilarious to us as Chiefs fans, Craig, before we get into the draft, I want to talk to you about, since we haven't had you on since around this time last year, something happened between last April and this April. The Chiefs won a second Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes in 4 years. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it's
crazy,
been a busy
right?
past couple months. I know. I blanked out. Yeah.
One of the benefits that we have on this podcast, not being draft nicks, is that we just kind of have been so
basking.
we just been repeatedly basking and victory lapping the Super Bowl. So before we get into the draft and lean on your expertise there, I just wanted to kind of get your vibe and how you're feeling, how you celebrated, how you felt about a second Super Bowl ring in 4 years for the Kansas City Chiefs, a franchise that we all know. We're all old timers on this podcast. We're not going to make old jokes here, because, we're all around the same age. That we had to suffer through so much, and now here we are. How good was it?
I mean, it's so good. Like, it's so good to the point that it makes me, I love the draft. I love the offseason building and everything like that. And I'm still way into it here, but it makes me do the thing that I swore that I'd never do, which is just like, well, I don't like that guy, but I mean, if Brett does, because everything has just been, it's come up roses. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot put on Patrick Mahomes' shoulder. There's a lot going on there. And that's obviously the biggest difference maker in all of this. But it is so nice to have that second ring, because, lots of comparisons to the Green Bay Packers this offseason, especially when it comes down to the wide receiver room. It's like, they're trying to make him win with no wide receivers. Guess what? No, all the comparisons are gone, because he's got 2 rings. Like, it just kind of alleviates everything. It puts him in a different echelon there. You're putting him in with the Mannings now, which, I mean, he already should have been. Don't get me wrong. But when you get to the end of the career, it's looking like the only man that is going to even be in comparison with him for this kind of all-time list is going to be Tom Brady, and it's going to be solely because of rings. Getting that second ring now kind of takes away some of the legs to stand on from some individuals, from some people that are looking back on that, because getting a ring is hard, but there's enough quarterbacks that you can point to that it's like, okay, that guy's got one and that guy's got one. And sure, Trent Dilfer's got one and all of that. Getting 2 is really difficult. It is really, really, really difficult. And that's reserved for those guys that really, truly are in that more rarefied air of quarterback play. And he's still young. He's going to get another one. I think we all believe that. But it's just, this one was the one to get it over the hump, to now everybody can relax a little bit. Everybody can kind of sit back on this a little bit and just be like, hey, listen, let's just be along for the ride. Yeah, there's going to be a third. There could be a fourth. Let's just keep going here. But you got 2 we're past 2014, we're past 2013, we're past 2012. You can keep going back to some of those teams where expectations were either really low and they underperformed, or were a little bit higher and they still underperformed. Now you're just winning with whatever it is that this organization is throwing at Patrick Mahomes, is throwing at Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid. And it's just nice to kind of be able to sit back and go, yeah, those 2 rings matter so much in the grand scheme of things. And I'm still basking in it clearly here by my clearly long rant here, but I mean, it's awesome. It's wonderful. Yeah,
it feels amazing. It's so good.
Do either of you two know the exact number of quarterbacks that have won 2 plus rings? Because I do.
It's like 7 or 8.
What do you think, Craig?
Is it 11?
You're closer than Austin.
That sounds right. That sounds
13.
Right.
Okay. Mahomes was the 13th one, so it was 12 before this last one. Just to read through the list, because these are the greats of the greats: Brady, Montana, Bradshaw, Aikman, Peyton, John Elway, Jim Plunkett, Roger Staubach, Bart Starr.
These
greats of the great plus Elway.
Yeah, these
greats of the great plus Elway.
And Aikman. I mean, come on.
I mean, I know.
I mean,
I'm just
Terry
reading. I'm just
Terry
reading.
Bradshaw. I mean,
Eli, Bob Greasy,
Eli,
Patrick Mahomes, Ben Roethlisberger.
So,
I mean, listen, if you're going to list off a whole bunch of quarterbacks that you're like, boy, you want to talk about some of the greatest of all time, that's a good list to start with.
It is a good list, but it also, I mean, what's great about it is that, I mean, some of those guys are only on there because they won 2 rings. I would say counterpoint, the fact that the only reason that anybody thinks that Terry Bradshaw or Troy Aikman are even worthy of being in the Hall of Fame is because they have the rings. That's it.
Correct.
So when you have the rings and you also have the hardware and you have the stats like our guy Patrick Mahomes does, that's when you get into the GOAT of the GOAT conversation. He's already there at 27 years old. Before we talk about the upcoming draft, Craig, I guess we should rewind to this time last year when we were talking to you about, kind of what the Chiefs were going to do in this draft. They had the 2 first-round picks, but I mean, obviously they knocked this draft out of the park. It's crazy, but did it surprise you, I guess? Yeah. Did it surprise you just how good this draft class was and just how quickly this class came along? And I guess if there are particular players that maybe you weren't expecting to see much from in year one that overperformed, just tell us a little bit about, how this class contributed to where we are now, which is celebrating our 2nd Super Bowl in 4 years.
I mean, as an individual that covers the draft, I would really like to say, oh yeah, no, I knew that this draft class was going to knock it out of the park. Those were all players that I liked, which a lot of them were, but not to this extent. Listen, that secondary got an absolute facelift, and all of them played, well. Listen, I'm throwing Najee Johnson in there, a 7th round draft pick who played special teams for this team and was on the active roster for most of the year. That is hard to do, let alone it's really hard to do for a team that had as many picks as the Chiefs did last year, as complete of a roster as the Chiefs did last year, and to still make it as a 7th round draft pick. That's incredible. So I don't know that there's a single draft pick outside of maybe Darian Kennard, who I was very high on. I totally understood the process and was completely on board with it, that I didn't think was going to have this sort of expectation here. George Karlaftis exceeded my expectations greatly. He showed more at the end of the year than I think that I was expecting out of him in, the first 2 years of his career. Really good anticipation, bend, explosion, clearly came into his own a little bit more there. Was very high on Trip McDuffie, but had questions about him at the catch point. He did have some issues with that this season, but really, again, grew into that role. Brian Cook was a guy that I was not as high on as the rest of the NFL. And then there at the end of the year, all of a sudden you've got him deflecting passes to Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson, who were day 3 picks that come in there and play significant snaps. Sky Moore has a big role at the end of the year, and I expect to have a bigger role here. All of these guys, and shout out to Leo Chanel, shout out to all these other guys that are part of the team as well. I don't want to leave anybody out, but it was such a perfect reading of the board by Brett Veach. His ability to navigate up and down and try and manage his roster with the draft needs for the second year in a row, based on best player available, based on what this draft is really strong in, gives me absolute confidence in his ability to do that in year 3. This is a not great draft for a lot of different positions. A lot of the stuff that it is great at, and I know we'll get to this in a second, are positions that the Chiefs are strong in already. So it's just one of those, it's like, oh man, it doesn't fit up perfectly. But because he was able to expertly navigate the past 2 drafts and really take positions of need that were high quality positions. It's not just being like, hey, we took a linebacker and he turned out to be really good, because the NFL doesn't draft linebackers and we were able to catch a guy. It was corner, it was edge, it was wide receiver. Those are the positions that you want to see him taking a focus and taking a chance on. And I really loved the entire approach last year. I was going to love this draft class just because I loved the approach. I loved the way he came out of it. We got done with day 3, and I said, listen, that is the best draft that Brett Veach has had yet, just because of the way he navigated the board. Now you look at what happened from that draft class. I think that's going to give him confidence to do that again in future drafts here. And the process is going to be sound. And eventually you're going to have another draft like this in his tenure. And if you get a couple of those under Patrick Mahomes, I mean, you could just write it off for the rest of the NFL.
I mean, if you get a 3rd draft in a row like he's had the last 2, and the best part about it is not that, improvement in anything in life is ever linear, but like it's just been, each draft has been progressively better. And if this draft even comes close to equaling, let alone exceeding what he did last year, baby. Let's talk about this draft. So we're 1 week out. It's Wednesday. The draft is a week from tomorrow. And this is kind of my favorite time of the draft, because all the takes are out there, but now like all the crazy starts coming out, and it's so obvious at this point of the process that we don't know anything. We don't know who the number 1 pick is going to be. We got a pretty good idea that it's going to be Bryce Young, but the rest of this top 10 and the rest of the 30 picks that are going to be made before the Chiefs are on the board at 31, unless they trade up, which we know Brett loves to do, it's going to be bananas. So I guess let's start here before we talk about what the Chiefs are going to do. I think it's worth kind of discussing what we think the other 31 teams are going to do. So quick top 10 prediction for us. Who do you think is going to be off the board, if you had to guess?
I mean, I'm going to totally guess. I do think that it's Bryce Young. I know that I want to put a conspiracy theory, a conspiracy cap on here, a little tinfoil hat on top of my head, and say that they're just, blowing smoke here to try and get somebody to come up. That would be fun. That would be really fun. Boy, if this draft starts out like that, ooh, buddy,
oh man, it'd be great.
But yeah, it'd be great. But I do think that Bryce Young is going to go number 1 overall. I think that CJ Stroud is going to go number 2, and I can see a situation where a team trades up for that individual. Right. I don't think the Houston Texans are super sold on, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, or CJ Stroud. I think that their guy is Bryce Young here, and they're willing to just kind of load up another year, accumulate some picks, maybe save them for Caleb Williams next year. I know that we said that about Bryce Young this year, and then they went and screwed it up again. But it is what it is. So I expect CJ Stroud to go maybe number 2. You got Will Anderson. If a team moves up and jumps the Cardinals can't pass on Will Anderson. I think that's too good a value. Tyree Wilson is going to be in this top 10 here. I can see him going 4. I do think that Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Will Levis are going to go top 10. I think there are too many QB needy teams that aren't going to be in the situation like the Texans, where they're expected to be bad, and their fans are going to be willing to wait another year. I mean, hell, they waited through the Deshaun years, so why not wait another year for a true impact guy? And then Jalen Carter. And I do think that you're going to see Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon, cornerbacks there, go in the top 10, and then maybe one offensive lineman. I'll call it Paris Johnson Jr., just because I think that a lot of teams like him a lot right now. That would be my 10 if I had to guess. I think that I said 10 there. I may have miscounted,
right.
But yeah.
So 4 quarterbacks in the top 10, and I think that's chalk. We don't know necessarily where they're going to go, but it certainly seems like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson are going to go in some order inside the top 10. What do you make of this idea lately? And there was a report today that the Raiders might be the team to do this, of a fifth quarterback going somewhere in the first round. And to be clear, it seems like it would have to be Hendon Hooker, the
Mm-hmm.
25-year-old with the bad knee,
Yep.
going somewhere in the first round. What do you make of that possibility? Do you think it's going to happen? And are the Raiders the team to do it?
I mean, that would be a very Raiders pick, and I hate to even say it that way because I am amongst our KCSN crew probably one of the highest on Hendon Hooker. Yeah, I get the limitations. I get that his age is there. He's coming off an ACL. That offense is a little bit gimmicky and a
It's
little bit
weird.
fake. It is. It's a really weird offense. If you Chiefs fans, if you go and watch a Jalen Hyatt video, you just be like, oh wow, oh okay. Well, this offense seems designed to make it very easy on the quarterback. But I do think that Hendon Hooker is a special talent. The team that I have my eye on a little bit there in the back half is the Minnesota Vikings.
Hmm.
I think if the board fell in a way where all the quarterbacks go off early, there's a run on some of the other positions that they want before then. Hendon Hooker might just be a guy where they're just going to say, hey, we got Kirk for another year. Let's keep this guy in house. We know that we're basically burning this year, but he can learn under him. Then we can have another individual to transition in here because I think they're going to be good enough in that division for long enough to where they're not going to have a shot at a true difference maker at
Right.
quarterback. I
That's
think
fair.
that if Hendon Hooker was healthy, did not have a knee injury, we'd be talking about him amongst these other quarterbacks as being
Hmm.
a guy that could go top 10. And if that's the case, capitalize on the injury, I could see the Vikings taking him.
So that brings us to the Chiefs. And the Chiefs obviously are picking at the end of the first round. It is the 31st pick. Thanks, Dolphins, for forfeiting your pick, tampering with Tom Brady. Gets us one spot higher in the draft. But what do you think the board is going to look like? We're a week out now. We've had a lot of the industry mocks coming out, which are based more on team knowledge and less on speculation and team needs. A lot of rumors flying around. How do you see this board shaking out, and what position groups do you think are going to be the strongest when the Chiefs are on the clock at 31?
I do think that all the offensive tackles are going to be gone. I hate to say it because I do love some of the offensive tackles at the top of this draft. I
Yeah.
think that all of the good ones are going to be gone. I think that you probably could see a DeJuan Jones at the bottom of that. I don't know that he's got the foot quickness to, kind of go down the Andy Reid route. Yeah, you can make obvious comparisons to Orlando Brown Jr., but the fact that the Chiefs didn't really try and retain that individual
Sure.
makes me think that they're looking to get a little more athletic. So I do think that like he might be the only one. Maybe an Anton Harrison is there out of Oklahoma's offensive tackle, but the rest of the offensive tackles are going to be completely gone. Like I said, I do think that you're going to see all of the wide receivers off the board. I don't think that there's going to be, one of the really special ones that are there. And so if that's the case, yeah, I know you're looking at that going, well, then who's left? I think the positions that are really good then that are left, defensive tackle and cornerback, and tight end. I think that those are the ones that really kind of line with the end of the round or the first round there. I know those are mostly unsexy picks for Chiefs fans. I mean, especially a cornerback. Teams are, there's going to be guys that are going to look at that and be like, oh, why do they need another cornerback? The value's there. That's not a bad position to invest in. Tight end, yeah, Travis Kelce's not getting any younger, but you're not getting a tight end to replace Travis Kelce. You're getting another tight end for 12 personnel. You're replacing Jody Fortson, Blake Bell, Noah Gray. Again, not a really sexy pick that you're making there. And then if you're looking at defensive tackle, you're trying to look for somebody to play next to Chris Jones, a big guy like maybe Mozzie Smith, or hopefully, because I'm a big fan of him, Brian Bresee is available there. Now he's more of an inside-outside guy that could play some defensive end on early downs, kick in on the inside. It would make some sense there, but again, not a guy that you're going to look at and say, "Oh, that dude is probably a 13 sack kind of guy." It's going to be a guy that's going to have a high floor. It's going to improve the overall front seven, but is not going to be somebody that you look back on and you're like, wow, I am sure glad that we made that pick. When you're looking at box score, he's going to do things outside of the box score in that regard. So I do think, these are champagne problems to have if you win the Super Bowl a whole bunch of times and you're good. But I think that the positions that are really deep there are just not going to be ones that are going to be really flashy or really fill a bunch of needs for the Chiefs.
Do you make anything of the potential pressure for the draft being in Kansas City and that first round pick? And like, do you think that it's on anyone's mind? Maybe Clark Hunt, but maybe, and I'm thinking about also like the crowd reaction if the Chiefs draft a tight end as with their first pick. Like, I don't know if people would be into that with how beloved Kelsey is and team needs and stuff like that. Like, I get the fit, but I just wonder if that's going to play a factor or not. You would hope it does not, right?
Yeah. I think that that's not real. I think that Clark Hunt is enough. I think Clark Hunt likes being a part of it. I think that he knows, what's going on in that building. They keep him abreast of what's happening there. But I don't think that Clark Hunt is going to be sitting there if the Chiefs get to 31 and they look at the board and they go, well, this is terrible. Like, we don't want any of the guys here at 31. The value's just not there. We feel more comfortable trading down. Clark Hunt's not going to stand there and be like, nope, you got to pick. And I know that there's a lot of people that truly, genuinely believe that Clark Hunt is a savvy enough owner to know to stay the hell out of the way of Brett Veach and Andy Reid's stuff that they're doing here. Because guess what? As much as you want to pick at pick 31 and try and maximize the number of eyeballs that are on it and the celebration of the draft being in Kansas City and all of that, he would much rather have to wall off the streets of Kansas City again because, they've got a Super Bowl parade because they did the right thing and traded down and took value.
We saw a lot of pushback also on the idea earlier on in the offseason of the Chiefs potentially trading away that first pick for, some impact player or something. And I just saw a lot of hot takes that were just saying that, the Chiefs would just never do it with the draft being in Kansas City. They have to have a first round selection and all that stuff. But I'm with you. I think that, if anything, Clark might be sitting there going like, I hope we have a first round pick. Like, that's clearly that would be fun for them, but I don't think he's going to let it impact what Veach's plan is for the team. So I agree with that. Let's keep talking about the draft and the draft guide, the KCSN draft guide. We, of course, want to help you and the great team at KCSN plug the really, really hard work that everybody did on the draft guide. First of all, just tell people real quick before we get into it where people can get it and what your thoughts were on being involved with this draft guide for, what was this, the 7th or 8th one in a row? You guys have done this forever now, right?
We have done it now 5 years.
It feels like a lot longer.
5 years now. I know it just feels like a 7 because of all the work that goes into
like
it.
More than that,
yeah. That's gum.co/KCSN23. That'll get you the draft guide there. Or you can use gum.co/Briscoe sucks. That's a good one.
That's a really good one.
Anyway, that's a really good one. It is what it is the most comprehensive draft guide that could be out there for Kansas City Chiefs fans. It's got, basically an outline of the player itself, so you know what you're getting, strengths and weaknesses. But my favorite part that we do is how they fit with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Agreed.
And we've been doing this long enough. We know what we're getting with Brett Veach. We know what we're getting with Andy Reid, and certainly with Steve Spagnuolo, sometimes to the point of rigidity there. But you can kind of identify players that really do fit the Chiefs scheme at this point. We've been doing it long enough that our hit rate last year was actually insane. Guys that we targeted and we were like, hey, this dude is a high fit for the Chiefs. We think that the value would be right here and stuff like that. And the Chiefs actually got better value than that, but targeted a lot of high fit individuals there. So it's nice to have that. And it's also nice to have 5 years of history to look back on there and to be able to say, especially now that they're getting to free agent classes, and you can look back on that and say, oh, that's a guy that could fit with the Chiefs. And we identified that back in college because of this and X, Y, and Z. And then they end up with the Chiefs. And it's like, oh,
you guys did that with O'Menihue. I mean,
we did.
It's
Drew
definitely
Tranquil. Yeah, exactly. It's a fun resource. It's not just for the draft, but it's certainly one that while you're watching the draft, maybe you see a guy go off the board and you're like, oh, I really like that guy. I wish the Chiefs would have drafted him. And there's times where like you can turn to that page and go, oh, that's why he wouldn't have fit because of X, Y, and Z. You know, maybe this skill set didn't identically fit with that. So maybe it's a good thing that it didn't go with the Chiefs or, you know, went before the Chiefs or whatever the case may be. Fun resource there. I forget what your original question was. I'm just ranting
I just
about
wanted
the draft
to
guide now.
I just wanted to wax poetic about the draft guide. I love it. Obviously it's a big help for people like Austin and I who love football but are not draft heads by any means, and we love to sit here and pour through what you guys think about this stuff. Shout out to the team: Kent Swanson, Matthew Lane, Jacob Stack, Zach Hicks, Zach Eisen, Ross Uglum, I think,
Yes, correct.
And of course you for putting together all that stuff. So you guys do great work. Anybody that's listening, please go support KCSN and go get the draft guide. You will not regret it when you're watching the draft and you actually know some stuff about some of these guys. I want to ask you, since you know you've got as good of a grip on this draft as anybody, are there some players that you're higher on than the consensus, either national consensus or maybe even draft guide consensus? Like, are there some diamonds in the rough for you that you feel like I feel like I'm righter than other people, more correct than other people about this guy?
Well, yes, I do have some of those guys. You know, I am not quite as involved this year. Maybe next year is getting back into it. I just did kickers and punters in the draft guide, but I'm watching guys and I'm fans of that. But typically in the draft guide, every one of those other individuals has their my guys that they're either traditionally higher on than the national media or they're higher on than the rest of the KCSN crew. So guys that would be my guys in this class, Brian Bresee. I know that he's going round one, so it's hard to have a my guy that's going round one. I think that he's an exceptionally smart football player. I think that there's going to be a team that's out there that is going to get a guy that had some injury history, just went through an absolute hellacious last year there. He had a sibling that passed away too, alongside some injuries, like just a bad deal for that guy. And he fell. He was a kind of a consensus top pick, and he fell because of all these injuries. He fell because he didn't play quite as well. I think that you're getting a guy that loves football, really smart individual, can play defensive tackle, can play defensive end. This feels like a guy that Bill Belichick's going to draft, and then we're going to come back on, 3 years later and be like, well, what the hell? How did we let this happen again? It just feels like that kind of player there. Another guy that I'm a lot higher on than maybe some other people here is Jonathan Mingo. I know that he's catching fire as of late, but I remember watching him, a month and a half ago, but when he was, kind of a consensus, third, fourth round draft pick, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. This guy plays like A.J. Brown. He really does. He's not as refined as A.J. Brown was coming out. He doesn't have that same polish, has some concentration drops, but the physicality, the run blocking, needs some route running, polish on there. But these are all things that can be fixed by, this coaching staff, by whoever it is that's going to be the wide receiver coach for him and with whatever team he lands on. I think that he's got an exceptionally high ceiling and a guy that you're probably getting in round two. I know he's getting some round one love all of a sudden here. He feels like this classic late riser that we look back on at the end when he goes at the end of round two, early round three. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, the NFL hyped him up a little bit because they heard some rumors there. But I feel like his ceiling is really high. And then maybe a last guy that I can kind of look at that I'm a little bit higher on than maybe the consensus is Keandre Coburn out of Texas. Huge nose tackle. Has a little bit of pass rush juice. Isn't just, a two gapping guy that's going to sit in there and just absorb two blockers and free everybody else up. He certainly can do that, but he'll push the pocket a little bit. And we have seen the NFL go to more, he's not necessarily a big athlete or anything like that, but we've seen the NFL put a premium on nose tackles that can rush the passer a little bit because your sub package at this point with playing two split safeties, playing two high safety looks, your box is lighter. So you've got to have guys that you can feel comfortable stopping the run and can get enough pass rush. Now, it's not just the situation where you're looking at it and you're going, we're just going to put a pure run stuffer on the field and then swap him out when it gets to passing downs. No, with the amount of split safety coverages, 2 high coverages, you got to have a guy that can do both in there. And I think that he's got enough juice to do just that, just give you that little bit of extra there. So I think that he's going to sneak into maybe the very end of day 2, because I think he's a high character guy that can do a little bit of that, and an NFL team's going to fall in love with him.
Love it. I want to ask you real quick about FAU. And no, I do not mean Florida Atlantic and their run to the Final Four. Of course, I'm talking about local legend Felix Enudike-Uzama from K-State and Kansas City. You guys have him as edge 8, which I think is about right for him. I think it'd be fun, obviously, pick for our K-State fans out there that are want to root for one of their guys to join the Chiefs. How do you like his potential in the NFL? How do you like his potential fit? The draft guide does have him as a medium fit. Player comp on him is Melvin Ingram. What are your thoughts on FAU?
Yeah, I mean, he checks a lot of Spags boxes, not all of them. That's why he's a medium fit. That's one of those, from a fit perspective, the edge position, it's an easy one because there's just very defined metrics. It's not necessarily even play style. You just look at it and say,
opinion.
It's not even opinion. It's just that guy doesn't typically go to the Chiefs. So, yeah, I really like FAU. I think that he's got the potential to be kind of more of a through the tackle kind of rusher. I know he can beat a guy on the outside, but that length, the long frame that he's got, and the ability to use it as kind of he's got enough explosion to use that long frame to go through the tackle. I think that that's going to keep him in the NFL a very long time. I think he's got a pretty high floor. Again, another high character individual that has a lot of urgency, a high motor. NFL team's going to love that. The Chiefs love George Karlaftis for a very similar reason there. Not to that level of player, I think, not to that level of prospect, but certainly one that a lot of the things that you can maybe do outside of maybe some stiffness are things that you can rectify with him. Now, may not be a year 1 guy. That's why he may not slip into the back end of round 1. But I think that his probably floor at this point is about pick 50, 55. And that's an exceptional place to try and get him. Whoever it is that's going to be picking in that range, if the Chiefs decide to trade back and pick him up, around that range, I think that's a phenomenal pick at that point. I think he fits a lot of things. Even though he's a medium fit in the draft guide there, I think that some of that aspect can be overcome by the way he plays, even if all the measurables aren't really up to snuff for Spags.
Yeah, that's fair. So I don't usually like talking negatively about prospects. I think most of us, we're guessing and we're hoping and stuff like that. But is there any sort of poison pill in this draft for the Chiefs that you've kind of looked at and thought like, man, I mean, it might work out, but I kind of hope if the Chiefs are picking right here that they don't go this direction with this player for a certain number of reasons? Is there anybody that you're just not thrilled about?
I mean, I can put it out there because inevitably this will be what happens, and everybody can point back to this and be like, "Oh,
you did say George Karlaftis last year."
Yeah, you did.
I did say,
and the Chiefs did pick him, and
I did say that. No, and here's the funny part: is I said George Karlaftis, and then I believe we did. I don't remember exactly how many weeks it was before the draft. It may have been about this time, but I did say George Karlaftis. That last week before the draft, I actually went back and watched his freshman tape, and I went, well, who's this? Who is this individual that's on the field there? It's like, he's much lighter, more svelte. He's got a little more explosion and bend, and some of the testing then lined up there. So I did say that. So I should really say a player that I want here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say Will McDonald, edge out of Iowa State. I feel pretty confident in this. George Karlaftis at least checked all the boxes. Will McDonald does not. He weighs 239 pounds. That's way too light for Steve Spagnuolo. He's got the length at the very least, but does not have the weight requirement for it. Will McDonald is not fun to watch for me. First of all, he's coming from the Iowa State program who runs a little bit more of a gimmicky, defense. It doesn't always translate to the NFL. But I don't think that he can play the run particularly well. I think that he just kind of fires out and hopes to make an impact there. So, he's not really going to hold the point of attack, which is going to be kind of a terrible fit for a 4-3 defensive end under Steve Spagnuolo there. Doesn't really play with power, doesn't really contain the quarterback particularly well. his wins are either later in the rep when he's using his speed to get by a guy, or he's able to just kind of beat a tight end up the arc, or get past a slower footed offensive tackle. It is a pure speed rush. And yes, that definitely is nice. His spin move is really nice, but it is, again, more of a finesse player. And
Right.
I don't think that fits with the way the Chiefs have built this defensive line. I think that's a major outlier for them. I am now, maybe I've been Spags pilled at this point. I don't like defensive ends that don't play the run well, and he just doesn't really play the run well. So if he's the pick at 31, I'm really not going to be all that ecstatic, because I just don't think that he's going to be an early down player for this. And the Chiefs already have enough guys to rotate around in their sub package to where I don't need another defensive end to rush the passer.
Yeah, that's fair. You guys have him as edge 12 and 83rd overall in your top 300. So certainly would be, seems like a guy that would be a pretty big reach at 31.
Yeah,
so
I'm not the only one who doesn't like him in the KCSN draft.
You're not, absolutely. Okay, so we want to close this with a little game. We played a game with you last time that technically
went so well.
It went south, but it was a fun exercise. But this time we are using our favorite new technology toy, ChatGPT, and I want you to name an NFL prospect that I am then going to ask ChatGPT for a quick scouting report. I'm going to read the scouting report, and then I want you to just grade how accurate you think it is, what kind of stuff it screwed up and stuff like that. So I just name a guy that, we haven't necessarily talked about, but that you're familiar enough with, that when you read this ChatGPT output, you'll have a good grade on it.
I'm going to constrict myself even further here, just for the fun of the exercise. I'm going to only pick from day 3 prospects.
I'm very interested in what it
that'll
is.
Be more fun.
Here.
That'll
yes.
be more
fun. So this will be more fun for those that maybe aren't familiar with some of these guys. We can talk about them a little bit. So yeah. Do you want the school or just the name? Because if I give the school, is ChatGPT going to catch on to that a little too much?
I think that we want it to be able to know who the person is. Like I think that if we get the guy's school and position and name, then I want to see how accurate ChatGPT knows the guy.
Love it. Okay. I'm going to say John Gaines II. That is Jon.
Yep.
Gaines II. UCLA offensive guard.
Okay. So ChatGPT is coming up with the...
Yeah, sure. We can.
Okay. Name, John Gaines II. Position, guard. College, UCLA. Height, 6'4". Weight, 315. Class, redshirt senior. Pros. Versatility. Gaines II has experience playing both left and right guard, adding value to an NFL offensive line with his ability to contribute at multiple positions. Football IQ. He demonstrates a high football IQ, understanding defensive schemes and adjusting his blocking assignments accordingly. This allows him to maintain proper positioning and leverage during plays. Hand technique. Gaines II shows impressive hand technique, consistently striking defenders with a strong initial punch and maintaining a solid grip throughout the play. This helps him control and steer defenders away from the ball carrier or quarterback. Pass protection. Gaines II is effective in pass protection, displaying a strong anchor and a wide base to absorb bull rushes. He also exhibits good lateral agility, allowing him to mirror and counter speed rush from defensive linemen. Run blocking, he excels in the run game, demonstrating a powerful lower body and the ability to drive defenders off the line of scrimmage. Gaines II uses proper footwork to create running lanes and shows the ability to climb in the second level to engage linebackers. And finally, durability. Gaines has proven to be a durable player throughout his college career, consistently staying healthy and available for his team. Couple cons listed. Length at 6'4". Gaines has slightly below average height and arm length for an NFL guard. This could make it more challenging for him to maintain leverage against taller and longer defensive linemen. Quickness off the snap. He may need to improve his quickness off the snap to consistently gain an advantage against NFL caliber defensive linemen. Faster and more explosive defenders could exploit this weakness. And finally, balance. Gaines occasionally struggles with balance, which can lead to him being caught off guard by counter moves or quick changes in direction. Improving his core strength and footwork will be essential to addressing the issues at the NFL level. Projected NFL draft round, 4th round. NFL comparison, Gabe Jackson of the Seattle Seahawks. And finally, summary. John Gaines II projects as a solid, versatile guard who can contribute on an NFL offensive line. His impressive hand technique, strong run blocking, and effective pass protection make him a valuable asset in both the run and pass game. However, his below-average height and arm length, along with the need to improve quickness, could limit his ceiling. With continued development and the right coaching, Gaines has the potential to become a dependable starting guard in the NFL. What do you think about ChatGPT's view of John Gaines II?
I think that GPT should just write the KCSN draft guide for us. I think that would be wonderful. I disagree with a lot of it, but I think that it would be wonderful. When we get to these day 3 picks, I mean, hey, why the hell not? Let's go, right? No, I do
What did
think
it get
that
wrong?
it hit. What did he get wrong? The versatility is correct. I do think that his arm length, he's got 33 and 5/8 inch arms. That's actually really good for a guard.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're going to
that,
be perfectly fine with doing
yeah,
that.
that
He is
struck me
not
really well.
he does not have a good anchor. I think that that's probably his biggest weakness. We saw him at the Shrine game. He's a guy that got bullied a little bit. He's going to be a zone blocking guy, so good movement, getting on the run there, but it's not going to hold up at the point of attack like at all. I think that his hands aren't awesome. He is kind of late to punch sometimes, so I don't think that that's particularly great either. But I think that he's a good zone blocking center, a guy that a guy I almost mentioned that I'm higher on than maybe some other guys there. I think he's going to get drafted, and I think that if he goes to a team like the Eagles or something like that, he's got the ability to play center. We saw him play it at the Shrine game. He played only left guard and right guard in college at UCLA, but we saw him play it at the Shrine game, and I was actually pretty impressed by how he held up against guys like Keandre Coburn, PJ Mustafa, guys that were, way bigger and stronger than him. His ability to get around him and, kind of get on the move a little bit was pretty impressive. But overall, not a bad job by Chat GPT there.
ChatGPT is not going to be taking Craig Stout's job anytime soon. Craig, it's been a blast. Tell the listeners about what you guys got going on next week for the draft in terms of coverage.
Oh my goodness, what don't we have going on? No, we got a lot of stuff that's happening on the KCSN channel. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio stuff. Please, 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 if you like video podcasts, go and subscribe to the KCSN YouTube page there. Just, ignore my face on that, but watch everything else that's there. It's also going to be exclusive content during the season, so make sure you subscribe because there's going to be video breakdowns that don't happen on the audio channel. I get the absolute pleasure to talk to Derek Johnson and Mike DeVito about defense every single week during the season and break down film. That doesn't happen on the audio channel. So if you're an audio only listener, get over there and do the video stuff as well. But during the draft, we will be live on that YouTube channel every single day, every single minute of the NFL draft. I'm going to be talking about the NFL draft for 20 hours next week while the draft is going on. You won't be able to hear any of the draft stuff, but we will have highlights that will play for players as they are drafted. We're going to break down why they went in the positions that they did. It's not just Chief stuff there. We will be doing it from Pizza Bar and Power and Light on Thursday. So if you guys are in Kansas City, you can go there. Friday and Saturday, we will be at No Other Pub in Power and Light, and you can come and visit us there as well. We will be there the entire time. Like I said, for the NFL draft, we're going to have some special guests. We're going to have some special fun giveaways, things like that we're going to do. So please, please, please tune in or come and visit us. I will be more than happy to give you a hug and not speak to you because I'm going to be talking for 20 straight hours.
And I assume we can get that coverage on your new KCSN app, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you,
right?
man. My goodness, you're good at this.
I've got it. I use the app, man.
Hey, that's awesome, man. I'm really glad. We're very happy that we got the KCSN app out right now. It's got what you want, basically. It's got audio feeds. It's got video feeds. It's got a link to our Substack page where I'm writing articles. We got film breakdowns for all this Chief stuff as well. So if you are a fan of Kansas City sports, download the app. You can stay up to date with everything that we've got going on. KCSN doesn't just cover the Chiefs, they cover the Royals, they cover sporting, they cover the KC Current, who have had a lot of news today. They cover all the local, collegiate teams, football, basketball, baseball. You mention it, we've got it all. So you can go there, follow it, be the most knowledgeable KC sports fan that you possibly can.
Craig, it's been a pleasure. Good luck with the draft coverage next week.
Thank you, fellas, for having me on.